folks, the least serious story of the day, maybe even the least serious story of the year. The Lincoln Project tweeted this out. Unironically, Bernie Sanders and Dick Cheney are united on something that tells us all we need to know. So this is actually a Lincoln Project cartoon featuring an animated Bernie Sanders and an animated Dick Cheney trying to get along for the sake of electing Kamala Harris.
Dick, we never got along.
Correct.
You were a warmonger.
And you were a commie.
Surprising to be on the same side as you.
Surprising to me, too.
I'm still on the left.
I'm still on the right.
But if we can agree on Trump,
it means something big.
Bigger than policy.
Bigger than ideology.
We are both voting for Kamala Harris.
Because this election is a choice between America
or Trump.
That was amazing. You know how much
money? That is so adorable. That's so adorable. Isn't that cute? Aren't they both so cute? Oh my god, I love that ad. I love it. It's so cute. Look at Dick Cheney. You know, he's just like a curmudgeon. He's just an old curmudgeon. You know, he's right. He reminds me of my uncle. My uncle Hunts.
Yeah, my uncle Hans. My uncle doesn't torture, but other than that, he reminds me just of my uncle. He's just like my uncle.
There are family stories, but I've never wanted to get into it with my uncle. But he's a lot like my uncle. Maybe exactly like my uncle. I don't want to get into it.
The amount of money that this organization takes in to put out stuff like this, once again, just example number 3,000 of the grift is in the duopoly. Man, you can produce stuff like this unironically and tweet it out and trust that you will be in business tomorrow and every day thereafter if you just play the game that you're supposed to. And, there's a lot of talk, especially with the Rescue the Republic coming up. And, Rage Against War Machine had this same issue a year and a half ago when they did the first thing of the left and the right and the horseshoe theory and this and that. Well, what about this? What about this collaboration? This is horseshoe theory of a kind, just inside the Overton window, right? The furthest left guy who is allowed in Washington, Bernie Sanders, gets to make common cause in this funny odd couple parody cartoon with the furthest right figure within the Overton window, Dick Cheney. That kind of horseshoe theory is not only permissible, it is to be lauded. It is to be celebrated. It is to be commended that people of opposite points of view can come together and unite behind a cause. As long as you do it on the establishment's terms, they not only allow for that, they celebrate that. They like that. That's why they could tweet something out like this unironically and trust that the checks will keep coming. And boy, will they. Will they ever?
Well, yeah. A lot of people, our audience has grown a lot. I haven't talked about this in a while. In my past life with my theater company, we did a video when my politics were still very shit-lib. And it was a response to somebody had done a video that went viral about Obama to You Picked a Fine Time to Leave Me, Lucille. So we did a response to that called You Picked a Fine Time to Be a Dumbass. That shit, and we were like a nothing account. Like we never used the account. I think it might have been the first video on that account. 5.5 million views that thing has to date. Wow. Somewhere around there. 5.5 million views. That is where the money is, because I was told YouTube kept featuring it on the homepage. Because who do you think works for YouTube? People with those kinds of politics. You do what we do, you have to constantly worry they're going to give you the axe. Forget about putting you on the homepage.
Exactly. But yeah, no, this kind of stuff, totally permissible, adorable. And you know how shrewd they are. You could see here. I won't play the whole thing again, but
Dick, we never
they even
got
did
along.
like an odd couple type theme without using the melody because that would have been copyright issue.
They would have, they would have to pay.
Yeah, they would have to pay. So they would if they use that's an issue.
Right.
But shrewd, good operation that
they
have.
Played around with it a little bit. This is the kind of politics that you get from watching corporate media. In the end, we're all on the same team. This is all about saving American democracy. What about our foreign policy? It's complicated. Right. It's complicated. These people, they try to do the right thing, but it's a difficult world. And in the end, there are dictators and threats all around, and we have to try to negotiate that. Sometimes we make mistakes. This is what watching that shit does to your brain, man. I saw somebody, we just did a couple of theater pieces for the first time in a while. And I saw somebody who very much, she used to be a Green, but she organizes to support Democrats every election cycle, and I guess she's getting a lot of shit from pro-Palestine people more than she's used to.
Right.
And she was, saying, "Leave me alone. You do you. You don't have to love people to vote for them," and all that shit. And one of the people in the comments said, "I'm so glad that you're saying this. It's like Stephanie Rule says." This is how these people think, man. This is how they think Stephanie Rule is someone to quote unironically.
Yeah, unironically, right. Yeah. Well, Stephanie Rule was just on Bill Maher. That might be why, because there was a piece that we almost
That
covered
makes
today.
sense. Yeah.
We almost covered it today. Brett Stevens, who's terrible, neocon.
And another one of them.
Go ahead.
Not to cut you off, another one of them dropped a video from Oliemi talking about her brilliant insight about why you should support Kamala.
Oh, Oliemi's she's for Kamala too. Interesting. Yeah, no.
Well, she basically made the Nader argument. What was that, Nader? No, Chomsky. Chomsky said you have to vote for Biden because voting is strategic and da 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 and all that. Yes. But in this particular case, I don't really feel like you can argue that. You are as likely to be able to influence the Trump White House as on these issues as you are going to be able to influence the Harris White House, and in both cases, slim to nil.
Yeah. Well, Stephanie Rule was on Bill Maher, and the segment that we almost covered goes on where Brett Stevens, who's a terrible guy, neocon, big Zionist guy, says something to the effect of, I'm an undecided voter, meaning I guess he's between voting for Kamala and not voting at all. I can't imagine he would vote for Trump. He's one of the never he's very much cut from the Lincoln Project cloth. He's not with them, but he's that kind of guy. And he says, but it is troubling that she has only done one puff piece interview. She hasn't really fleshed out a policy agenda. And Stephanie Rule says, when you go to Nirvana, I'll move in next door and we could be neighbors. And basically saying that, hey, this isn't utopia where politicians court voters. Right. I mean, like the world. This is what's so ironic is they view this as an existential fight to preserve democracy. They have no understanding of how democracy actually works. They view democracy as a spectator sport where we just observe what's going on and then we pick which option we like. They have no concept of people actually influencing the politicians. Right. That's what democracy is. And that concept is just completely lost. They have absolutely no understanding of that, yet they care so much about democracy.
Right. This is what I call the peasant mind. It is the assumption that you don't really have power.
Right. Exactly,
and that's the way it has to be.
It has to be. Right.
You can't challenge that. So if you start talking about holding politicians accountable in any way other than an Oliver Twist way, please, sir, may I have some more? If you're talking about really challenging power, you're a fairy duster. You're a fairy duster. You got your head in the clouds. You're foolish. You're not a serious person. This is what watching that shit does to your brain. Now I'm kind of curious because I never read that comment past Stephanie Rule, but that sounds about right in terms of like what she would have been referring to.
Yeah, it's probably.
It's probably that. But yeah, that is how they want you to think. But we are well into the Romans called themselves a republic well after Julius Caesar ended the republic. It's a brand. It's a brand. We have to preserve democracy because the name democracy has a lot of cachet in our society because of our heritage. So invoking its name in defense of a candidate or a cause, they perceive it as having a lot of potency. It still does with some people, but not like it used to.
Please clap.